Admiral Vextar's 6 eyes blinked in rapid sequence as he stared at the display screen. His purple skin had turned a sickly pale color, and his clawed hands shook as he gripped the command console. For the first time in his 300 years of life, the mighty Catherian commander felt true fear. "This cannot be real," he whispered through his breathing slits. "Run the scan again." The junior officer at the sensor station, a young Catherian named Kixmole, pressed the controls with trembling fingers. "Sir, I have run the scan 17 times. The result is always the same. There is a human vessel in Sector 7 of our defensive grid." Vextar felt his stomach twist into knots. Sector 7 was the heart of Nexus Prime, the most protected system in the entire Catherian Empire. It was surrounded by layers of quantum barriers that could stop entire fleets. Gravitational mines floated in perfect patterns, ready to crush any ship that dared to approach. AI-controlled Sentinel vessels patrolled every possible entry point with weapons that could destroy a planet. Yet somehow, a single human ship sat there like it owned the place. The vessel looked nothing like the sleek Catherian warships. It was ugly and rough, made from mismatched pieces of metal welded together. Parts of it looked like they came from old cargo ships. Other sections seemed to be held together with simple bolts and wire. To Catherian eyes, it looked like floating garbage, but it was there. Impossible as it seemed, it was really there. Captain Jimin Park stood on the bridge of the Soul's Revenge and allowed himself a small smile. Around him, his crew worked at their stations with calm focus. They had done it. They had actually done it. "Yuna, what are you seeing on their communications?" he asked his tactical officer. Yuna Kim adjusted her headset and listened to the alien chatter flooding their systems. "They are completely confused, Captain. The Catherians are running scan after scan, but they cannot figure out how we got here." "Good," Jimin said. "Minho, how are our systems holding up?" The chief engineer, Minho Lee, wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked his instruments. "All systems are running smooth, Captain. The quantum drive is stable and our power levels are normal. But sir, I still cannot believe this worked." Jimin nodded. None of them could really believe it. For months they had planned this impossible mission. Earth's best scientists had told them it might work, but might was a very small word when facing the most powerful empire in the galaxy. The Catherian Empire controlled thousands of star systems. Their technology was so advanced that most species could not even understand how it worked. They had ruled the galaxy for over 1,000 years, crushing anyone who stood against them. Their ships could travel faster than light, their weapons could burn through any armor, and their sensors could detect a single virus from across a solar system. But somehow they could not see one human ship sitting right in front of them. Taehyung Choi, the communications officer, turned in his chair to face the captain. "Sir, I am picking up emergency signals from all over their fleet. They are calling this a Class 1 security event. I think we have really scared them." The crew of the Soul's Revenge had good reason to be pleased. Getting past Catherian defenses was supposed to be impossible. The Empire's scientists had spent centuries building the perfect protection system. Every ship, every missile, every piece of space dust that entered their territory was immediately detected and identified. The quantum barriers alone should have stopped them. These invisible walls of energy stretched across space, designed to detect and destroy anything that tried to pass through them. The barriers could sense the quantum signature of any living creature or artificial intelligence. Nothing was supposed to get past them without being noticed. Then there were the gravitational mines. Thousands of these devices floated in carefully planned positions around Nexus Prime. Each mine contained a miniature black hole that could be activated by remote control. When triggered, they would create a gravity field strong enough to crush a battleship into a ball of metal the size of a marble. The Sentinel fleets provided the final layer of protection. These ships were controlled by advanced AI systems that never slept, never got tired, and never made mistakes. They moved in perfect formations, their sensors constantly sweeping space for any sign of intruders. Their weapons could lock onto targets faster than any living pilot could react. Yet the Soul's Revenge had sailed through all of these defenses like they did not exist. Jimin walked to the main viewing port and looked out at the Catherian command station floating in the distance. It was a massive structure, bigger than most cities on Earth. Thousands of lights blinked across its surface as alien officers worked frantically to understand what was happening. "Sir," Una called out, "their security chief is demanding reports from every defensive station. They want to know how their sensors failed to detect us." "Let them wonder," Jimin replied. "The longer they stay confused, the better our chances of completing the mission." But even as he spoke, Jimin knew their time was limited. The Catherians were smart and resourceful. Sooner or later, they would figure out how to detect human ships. When that happened, the Soul's Revenge would be facing the combined firepower of the entire Nexus Prime defense fleet. For now, though, they had achieved the impossible. A single human vessel had penetrated the most secure location in the galaxy without firing a shot or triggering a single alarm. The fact that they were still alive to tell about it was nothing short of a miracle. Minho looked up from his control panel with a worried expression. "Captain, our quantum stealth field is holding steady, but I'm not sure how long we can maintain it. The energy requirements are enormous." "How long do we have?" Jimin asked. "Maybe 6 hours, sir. 8 at the most." Jimin nodded grimly. 6 hours to complete their mission and escape before the Catherians figured out how to see them. 6 hours to strike a blow against the empire that planned to enslave all of humanity. It would have to be enough. 3 months earlier, Dr. Sanao had stood before the Emergency Council of Earth's resistance leaders with news that would change everything. Her hands shook as she held the data tablet containing her research, knowing that what she was about to say would sound impossible. "The Catherians are planning to harvest our entire planet," she announced to the shocked faces around the table. "According to the intelligence we gathered from their probe, they see humans as perfect slave workers for their expansion projects. They plan to take every man, woman, and child from Earth within the next 6 months. General Harrison, the military leader of the resistance, slammed his fist on the table. "How many ships are they sending?" "That is not the important question," Sana replied quietly. "The important question is why they are afraid of us." The room fell silent. Commander Zhang raised an eyebrow. "Afraid? The Catherians rule half the galaxy. Why would they be afraid of humans?" Sana activated her tablet, and a holographic display appeared above the table showing brain scan images. "I have been studying the quantum signatures of human consciousness for the past year. What I discovered is remarkable." She pointed to the swirling patterns in the brain scans. "Every known intelligent species in the galaxy has a predictable quantum signature. Their thoughts create patterns that Catherian sensors can easily detect and track. But humans are different." The display changed to show a comparison between human and alien brain patterns. Where the alien patterns were sharp and clearly defined, the human patterns seemed to shift and blur like smoke. Human consciousness exists in a quantum state that appears random to their sensors. Sana continued, "When we think, when we feel, when we make decisions, our quantum signature becomes almost invisible to Catherian technology." Dr. Kim, the head of Earth's science division, leaned forward with interest. "Are you saying their sensors cannot detect us?" "Not exactly," Sana admitted. "They can detect our physical bodies and our technology, but they cannot predict our behavior or track our thoughts the way they can with other species. To their advanced AI systems, we appear as empty spaces." General Harrison looked confused. "What does this have to do with their invasion plans?" Sana took a deep breath. "I believe the Catherians discovered this quantum property years ago. They realized that humans could potentially interfere with their technology in ways no other species can. The slave labor story is a cover. They want to eliminate us because we represent a threat to their technological superiority." The implications of her words slowly sank in around the room. Commander Zhang spoke first. "If this is true, then maybe we can use this property as a weapon." "That is exactly what I am proposing," Sana said. "I believe it might be possible to build a ship that uses human quantum signatures to become invisible to Catherian sensors. Not just hard to detect, but completely invisible." Over the following weeks, Sana worked day and night with Earth's best engineers to design such a vessel. The Soul's Revenge was built in secret in an underground facility, using salvaged parts from crashed alien ships and human ingenuity to create something that had never existed before. The ship's hull was lined with quantum resonance plates that would amplify the natural quantum state of human consciousness. The navigation system was designed to respond to thought patterns rather than physical controls. Most importantly, the entire crew would need to maintain perfect mental discipline to keep the stealth effect working. Captain Jimin Park had volunteered to lead the mission, despite knowing it was likely a one-way trip. His crew was hand-picked from volunteers who understood the risks and were willing to sacrifice everything for humanity's survival. Jenny Song, the ship's medic and psychologist, had spent weeks training the crew in meditation techniques adapted from ancient human practices. "You must learn to think without thinking," she explained during one training session. "Any strong emotion, any moment of panic or excitement could disrupt your quantum state and expose us all." The training was brutal. Crew members had to learn to perform complex tasks while keeping their minds in a state of calm detachment. Kyung-soo Bae, the ship's pilot, practiced flying simulations while meditating, learning to guide the ship by pure instinct rather than conscious thought. "It feels like trying to walk without moving your legs," he complained after one particularly difficult session. "That is exactly right," Jenny replied. "You must let your subconscious mind do the work while your conscious mind stays quiet." The hardest part was learning to control their emotions during combat situations. Hoseok Nam, the intelligence officer, had to practice hacking enemy systems while remaining perfectly calm, even when simulated alarms were blaring around him. "Fear will kill us faster than any Catherian weapon," Jenny reminded them constantly. "The moment you feel afraid, angry, or excited, their sensors will see us." As launch day approached, the crew practiced their mental exercises constantly. They learned to breathe in specific patterns that helped maintain their quantum state. They studied meditation techniques that allowed them to function normally while keeping their consciousness in a state of fluid calm. The journey to Catherian space took 2 weeks, and every moment was a test of their training. They had to navigate through several outer defense checkpoints, each one a chance for their disguise to fail. The first checkpoint almost ended their mission before it began. A Catherian patrol ship passed within a few hundred meters of the Soul's Revenge, its sensors sweeping their hull. Yuna Kim later said it was the longest 30 seconds of her life, sitting perfectly still while trying not to think about the weapons pointed at them. But their training held. The patrol ship detected nothing unusual and continued on its route. The quantum mines were the next challenge. These devices were designed to explode when they detected certain thought patterns associated with hostile intent. The crew had to fly through fields of these weapons while maintaining thoughts of pure neutrality. "Think about clouds," Jenny advised over the ship's communication system. "Think about water flowing in a stream. Do not think about our mission or our destination." Min-Ho Lee found this particularly difficult as he monitored the ship's engines. Every instinct told him to watch for problems and prepare for emergency repairs. But those thoughts would have triggered the mines immediately. The final approach to Nexus Prime required the ultimate test of their discipline. They had to fly directly past Sentinel ships whose AI systems were specifically designed to detect deception and hostile intent. Taehyung, Choi watched the sensors as massive Catherian battleships passed above and below them, their weapon systems powered and ready. The temptation to feel fear or excitement was overwhelming, but the crew held their mental state steady through sheer willpower and months of training. When they finally reached the heart of the Catherian defensive grid, the crew allowed themselves a moment of quiet satisfaction. They had achieved the impossible through the power of human consciousness and the unique properties that made them different from every other species in the galaxy. Fleet Admiral Zixhai stood 7 feet tall, his dark blue skin marked with the silver scars that showed his rank in the Catherian military. His forearms moved in angry gestures as he paced back and forth in the emergency command center. Never in his long career had he faced such a complete failure of his defenses. "Explain to me again how this happened," he growled at his chief science officer. Dr. Velcron, a thin Catherian with nervous movements, checked his datapad for the 100th time. "Sir, according to all our instruments, the human vessel simply appeared. One moment our sensors showed empty space. The next moment there was a ship sitting in Sector 7. Ships do not just appear," Zixhai roared. "Our quantum detection grid can sense a single bacteria from across the solar system. How does an entire warship become invisible to us?" In the corner of the command center, a human slave named Ryujin Huang continued cleaning the computer terminals as she had been ordered. But her ears were listening to every word the alien spoke. Like all human slaves in the Empire, she had learned to speak and understand Catherian language to survive. Ryujin had been captured during a raid on a human colony ship 3 years ago. Since then, she had worked in various Catherian facilities, always keeping her head down and pretending to be harmless. The aliens saw humans as useful but stupid, good for simple tasks but not capable of understanding their advanced technology. They were wrong about that, but Ryujin was careful never to let them know how wrong they were. "Sir," Dr. Velcron continued nervously, "I have been reviewing our sensor logs from the past month. There have been several small anomalies that we dismissed as equipment errors." "What kind of anomalies?" Zixhai demanded. "Brief sensor shadows, minor gravitational fluctuations, energy readings that did not match any known sources. At the time, we thought they were caused by solar interference or cosmic radiation." The Admiral's eyes widened as he understood what the scientist was suggesting. "You think there have been other human ships in our territory?" "It is possible, sir. If they have developed some kind of stealth technology that our sensors cannot detect, they could have been scouting our defenses for weeks." Admiral Zixhai felt a chill run through his body. The idea that primitive humans had been spying on them without being detected was terrifying. If they could hide their ships, what else could they hide? Meanwhile, aboard the Soul's Revenge, Hoseok Nam was having the time of his life. The Catherian computer networks were more advanced than anything on Earth, but they had one major weakness. They were designed to keep out other Catherians and known alien species. They had no protection against the chaotic thought patterns of human hackers. "Captain," he called out with excitement in his voice, "you need to see this." Jimin hurried over to the intelligence station where Hoseok was working. The screen showed a detailed map of the galaxy with hundreds of star systems marked in red. "What am I looking at?" Jimin asked. "The Empire's expansion plans for the next 50 years. Hoseok replied grimly. "Earth is not the only world they plan to harvest. Look at this list." He brought up another screen showing detailed files on dozens of different species. Each file contained population counts, resource assessments, and something called a harvest timeline. "They are planning to enslave or eliminate 47 different species," Hoseok said quietly. "Some of these civilizations do not even know the Empire exists yet." Jimin felt sick as he read through the files. The Catherians saw other intelligent species the same way humans might view cattle or sheep. They were resources to be used up and discarded when no longer needed. "Can you copy all of this data?" Jimin asked. "Already working on it, Captain. But sir, there is something else you need to know." Hoseok pulled up another file, this one marked with symbols that indicated highest security classification. "This explains why they really want to eliminate humans." The file contained research reports about human quantum signatures and their effect on Catherian technology. The reports were written in cold scientific language, but their implications were terrifying. According to the documents, Catherian scientists had discovered that human consciousness could interfere with their technology in unpredictable ways. Humans near their computer systems sometimes caused random errors. Human prisoners working on their ships occasionally triggered equipment failures that could not be explained. The reports recommended immediate elimination of all humans before they could discover and develop these abilities. "They are not afraid of our weapons or our ships," Jimin realized. "They are afraid of our minds." Back in the command center, Admiral Zixhai was receiving more bad news. His communications officer, a young Catherian named Pexdal, looked up from his station with a worried expression. "Sir, we are getting reports of system failures from all over the fleet. Computer glitches, sensor malfunctions, even some weapon systems going offline for no apparent reason." "Are we under attack?" Zixhai demanded. "No, sir, there are no signs of enemy weapons being used. The failures seem to be random, but they are happening more frequently since the human ship appeared." Dr. Velcron studied the failure reports with growing alarm. "Sir, I think the human ship might be causing these problems somehow. The pattern of failure suggests some kind of interference field." Ryujin Huang smiled to herself as she continued her cleaning. She could see the fear in the aliens' movements, hear the panic in their voices. For the first time since her capture, she felt hope. Somehow, someway, other humans had found a way to fight back against the mighty Empire. Jihyo Kang, the weapons specialist aboard the Soul's Revenge, was busy analyzing the command station's defenses. What she saw made her both hopeful and worried. "Captain," she reported, Their defensive systems are incredibly powerful, but they have a serious weakness. Everything is controlled by central AI systems that rely on quantum processing. Can we exploit that weakness? Jimin asked. Maybe, Gio replied carefully. If the research data we found is correct, human consciousness might be able to disrupt their quantum processors. But I do not know how to do it deliberately. Yuna Kim looked up from her station with urgent news. Captain, I am detecting increased activity throughout their fleet. They are bringing more ships into defensive positions around the command station. How long before they surround us completely? Jimin asked. 2 hours, maybe 3. Jimin faced an impossible decision. Their original mission was to plant explosive devices in the command station and escape before anyone knew they had been there. But now they had discovered intelligence that could save dozens of other species from slavery or extinction. If they tried to transmit the data back to Earth, the transmission would reveal their position and bring down the entire Catherian fleet on them. But if they did not transmit it, millions of innocent beings would die. Tae-hyung, he called to his communications officer. How long would it take to transmit all this intelligence data back to Earth? At least 20 minutes for a complete transmission, Captain. But sir, the moment we start transmitting, every sensor in this system will lock onto our position. Jimin looked around at his crew. They had volunteered for a suicide mission to save humanity, but now they had a chance to save much more than just their own species. The question was whether they were willing to sacrifice themselves for aliens they had never met. The answer, he realized, said everything about what made humans different from the empire they were fighting. Yuna Kim stared at her tactical console in amazement as the impossible happened before her eyes. The Catherian sensor array she had been studying suddenly went dark, its lights blinking out one by one like candles being blown out by an invisible wind. Captain, she called out, her voice filled with wonder and confusion. I think I just shut down their primary sensor grid. Jimin rushed to her station. How? What did you do? I was trying to understand how their quantum processors work, Yuna explained, her hands still touching the interface panel. I was concentrating really hard on the control patterns, imagining how the data flows through their systems. And then, it just stopped working. Minho Lee looked up from his engineering station with excitement. Captain, the same thing just happened to me. I was studying their power distribution system, and when I focused on the main junction, it overloaded and shut down. Dr. Sana Oh had been right about more than just human quantum invisibility. As the crew of the Soul's Revenge was discovering, human consciousness could do far more than just hide from Catherian sensors. It could actively interfere with their technology in ways that defied all known science. This is not possible, Ji-hyo Kang whispered, as she watched her own displays. I was analyzing their weapons control system, and just by thinking about how to disable it, I actually disabled it. The realization hit Captain Jimin like a physical blow. That is why they want to eliminate us. Not because they need slaves. Because we can destroy their technology just by thinking about it. Across the command station, panic was spreading through the Catherian ranks. Admiral Zixhai watched in horror as system after system failed without explanation. Life support flickered, artificial gravity fluctuated, and even the emergency backup systems began shutting down. Sir, reported his chief engineer, we are experiencing cascade failures throughout the station. It is as if our own computers are turning against us. Is it some kind of virus? Zixhai demanded. No, sir, there is no evidence of any foreign code in our systems. The equipment is simply stopping, as if it has decided not to work anymore. Ryujin Huang felt a strange tingling sensation in her mind as she continued her work in the command center. For years, she had suppressed any thoughts of resistance or escape, knowing that such feelings would only bring punishment. But now, with human rescuers so close, she found it impossible to remain completely passive. As she cleaned a computer terminal, Ryujin found herself thinking about how much she hated the alien machines that kept her people enslaved. The terminal screen flickered and went black under her touch. She moved to the next terminal, her anger growing stronger with each step. These machines had calculated the worth of human lives like they were counting cargo. They had planned the enslavement of entire worlds with cold efficiency. As her hatred focused on the computer, sparks flew from its circuits and smoke began rising from its casing. What is happening? Demanded a Catherian officer as more terminals failed around Ryujin. I do not know, sir, she replied in perfect Catherian, keeping her voice humble and confused. They just stopped working when I touched them. The officer stared at her suspiciously, but like most Cytherians, he could not imagine that a primitive human slave could pose any threat to their advanced technology. Meanwhile, aboard the Soul's Revenge, the crew was learning to use their newfound abilities. Sokjin Park, the ship's navigator, discovered he could disrupt the targeting systems of nearby fighter ships just by concentrating on their flight patterns. As he focused on each enemy vessel, their weapons would miss their targets or fail to fire at all. It is like their machines cannot handle the way we think, he reported to Captain Jimin. Our thought patterns are too chaotic for their systems to process. But using these abilities came with a cost. Yeji Lim, one of the younger crew members, collapsed at her station after successfully shutting down an entire weapons platform. Her face was pale and she was breathing heavily. It takes so much energy, she gasped as Jenny Song rushed to help her. It feels like trying to lift a mountain with your mind. Jenny checked Yeji's vital signs and found that her brain activity was off the charts. Your neural pathways are firing at 3 times normal levels, she explained. Using these abilities is putting enormous strain on your nervous system. How long can we keep this up? Jimin asked. Not long, Jenny admitted. Maybe an hour or 2 at most before we start suffering permanent damage. The captain faced another impossible choice. Their quantum abilities gave them a chance to strike a devastating blow against the Empire, but using those abilities would likely kill them all. They were already exhausted from maintaining their stealth field, and adding active interference to their mental load might be more than human minds could handle. Taehyung Choi interrupted his thoughts with urgent news. Captain, I am picking up a transmission from inside the command station. Someone is trying to contact us. Put it through, Jimin ordered. A woman's voice came through the speakers, speaking in accented English. Unknown human vessel, this is Ryujin Huang aboard the Cytherian command station. I am a prisoner here, but I can help you. Ryujin, this is Captain Jimin Park. How can you help us? I know where they keep their central control systems, she replied quickly. If you can get someone inside, we could shut down their entire defensive grid. But you would need to act fast. They are adapting to your presence. Jimin looked around at his exhausted crew. They had already pushed their abilities to the limit, and asking them to do more might kill them. But Ryujin was right about the Cytherians adapting. Even now he could see enemy ships moving into position around them. What would we need to do? He asked. There is a maintenance shaft on level 12 that leads directly to the quantum processing core, Ryujin explained. If one of your people could reach it and use their abilities on the core itself, it would disable everything at once. That would be a suicide mission, Yuna pointed out. Whoever goes in there would not come out alive. I know, Ryujin replied sadly. But it might be the only way to save our people. Jungkook Han, the youngest member of the crew, stood up from his station. I will do it, no, Jimin said immediately. You are too young. I should be the one to go. With respect, Captain, you are needed here to command the ship, Jungkook replied calmly. And I have the strongest quantum abilities of anyone on the crew. Dr. O's tests prove that. It was true. During training, Jungkook had shown an unusual talent for affecting alien technology. While others struggled to cause minor malfunctions, he could shut down entire systems with just a few minutes of concentration. Besides, he added with a smile, someone needs to make sure the galaxy remembers what humans are capable of. As they made their plans, none of them noticed that their conversation was being monitored by Cytherian intelligence. Admiral Zixhai now knew that the humans were not just invisible to his sensors. They were actively attacking his technology, using nothing but the power of their minds. The implications terrified him. If humans could disable Cytherian technology just by thinking about it, then the Empire's technological superiority meant nothing. Every human slave in their territory was a potential saboteur. Every human world they conquered would become a source of ongoing resistance. For the first time in 1,000 years, the mighty Cytherian Empire faced an enemy they could not defeat with superior weapons or advanced technology. They faced an enemy that could turn their own machines against them with nothing but human consciousness, and the unique way that humans understood the universe around them. Jungkook Han checked his equipment one final time as the Soul's Revenge moved closer to the Cytherian command station. The small device strapped to his chest contained Dr. Sana-O's greatest invention, a quantum resonance broadcaster that could amplify human consciousness across the entire galaxy. Remember, Captain Jimin said as they prepared for the dangerous mission, you only need to reach the quantum processing core and activate the device. Do not try to be a hero. Jungkook smiled at his captain's words. They all knew this was a one-way mission. The quantum resonance broadcaster required a human mind to power it, and the energy output would be far more than any person could survive. I understand, sir, Jungkook replied. Tell my family I was proud to serve with all of you. The young man climbed into the small escape pod that would carry him to the command station. As the pod launched, the crew of the Soul's Revenge watched their friend disappear into the maze of docking ports and maintenance shafts that covered the massive alien structure. Ryujin Huang was waiting for him when he arrived. She had disabled the security systems in the maintenance area and cleared a path to the central processing core. Her hands shook as she led him through the narrow corridors, knowing that discovery would mean death for both of them. The core is just ahead, she whispered as they approached a massive chamber filled with glowing quantum processors. But there are guards, 3 Catherian soldiers with energy weapons. Jungkook closed his eyes and focused his mind on the weapons the guards carried. He had practiced this technique many times during training, but never under such pressure. Slowly, carefully, he directed his consciousness toward the alien technology. The guards' weapons began sparking and smoking as their internal circuits overloaded. Within seconds, all 3 weapons were completely dead. The confused soldiers looked at their useless guns in shock, unable to understand what had happened. Now, Jungkook whispered. He and Ryujin ran past the bewildered guards into the processing chamber. At the center of the room stood a tower of crystalline structures that pulsed with quantum energy. This was the brain of the entire command station, the system that controlled everything from life support to weapons. Jungkook placed his hands on the central crystal and activated Dr. O's device. Immediately, he felt the quantum resonance field building around him. His consciousness expanded beyond his physical body, reaching out through space to touch the minds of humans across the galaxy. On distant worlds where humans worked as slaves, sudden awareness flooded their minds. They remembered who they were and what they were capable of. Factory workers looked at the alien machines around them and understood for the first time that they could fight back. A human slave on a mining station focused his anger on the drilling equipment that had worked him nearly to death. The machines began shutting down one by one as his consciousness interfered with their quantum processors. On a transport ship carrying human prisoners to another world, a young woman concentrated on the ship's navigation system. The vessel suddenly changed course and began heading toward the nearest human colony instead of its intended destination. Across the Empire, thousands of similar incidents began happening simultaneously. Human slaves who had been helpless for years suddenly discovered they possessed abilities that could cripple the technology that kept them imprisoned. Admiral Zixhai watched in horror as reports flooded in from every corner of the Empire. Ships were losing navigation, weapon systems were failing, and even basic life support systems were shutting down wherever humans were present. Sir, his communications officer reported with panic in his voice. We are getting emergency signals from over 200 facilities. They are all reporting the same thing. Their human slaves have somehow learned to sabotage our technology. How is this possible? Zixhai demanded. Humans are primitives. They barely understand their own technology, let alone ours. But even as he spoke, the Admiral could see the evidence all around him. The lights in his own command center were flickering as Ryujin's presence began affecting the station's systems. Computer terminals sparked and went dark. Even the artificial gravity was becoming unstable. Back in the processing chamber, Jungkook felt his strength fading as the quantum broadcaster drew more and more energy from his mind. Blood ran from his nose and his vision was becoming blurry, but he could sense the awakening happening across the galaxy. It is working, he told Ryujin with a weak smile. They will never be able to control us again. Aboard the Soul's Revenge, the crew watched as Catherian ships throughout the system began losing power. Kim reported that most of the enemy vessels were dead in space, their crews unable to restart systems that had been mysteriously disabled. Captain, Taehyung called out. I am receiving transmission from human resistance cells all over the galaxy. They are reporting successful uprisings on dozens of worlds. Captain Jimin felt tears in his eyes as he realized what Jungkook's sacrifice had accomplished. The young man had not just saved humanity. He had freed every enslaved species in the Empire by giving humans the knowledge and confidence to use their unique abilities. The quantum resonance field was now so strong that even humans who had never known about their special abilities were beginning to affect alien technology around them. It was as if the entire species had suddenly awakened to its true potential. Nyan Cho, monitoring the communication systems, reported more good news. Captain, resistance forces are capturing Empire facilities throughout the galaxy. The humans are teaching other enslaved species how to fight back using their own natural abilities. As it turned out, humans were not the only species with quantum properties that could interfere with Catherian technology. They were just the first to discover and develop these abilities. Now, with human guidance, other races were learning to use their own unique consciousness patterns as weapons against their oppressors. In the processing chamber, Jungkook collapsed as the quantum broadcaster reached its maximum output. His final thought was of Earth and his hope that his people would use their freedom wisely. The explosion of quantum energy that followed his death sent shockwaves through every piece of Catherian technology in the galaxy. For several minutes, the entire Empire's computer network went completely dark. When the systems came back online, everything had changed. The Soul's Revenge fought its way out of the Nexus Prime system as the Catherian defensive grid collapsed around them. Minho Lee managed to restart their engines just as enemy ships began recovering from the quantum pulse, and Kyungsoo Bay flew them through the wreckage of what had once been the most secure system in the galaxy. They escaped just as the command station itself began breaking apart, its structural systems no longer able to maintain the massive structure's integrity. Months later, Captain Jimin stood on the observation deck of Earth's new orbital station and looked out at the stars. The war with the Empire was far from over, but humanity was no longer helpless. Human crews were now serving on resistance ships throughout the galaxy, using their abilities to level the playing field against superior alien technology. Yoona Kim joined him at the viewing port. "Do you think Jungkook would be proud of what we have accomplished?" "I think he would be amazed," Jimin replied. "He gave his life to wake up humanity, but he ended up waking up the entire galaxy." Reports continued to arrive daily of new victories against the Empire. Catherian forces were retreating from dozens of systems as their technological advantage disappeared. Other species that had been enslaved for centuries were forming their own resistance movements, inspired by the example set by humans. The galaxy would never again underestimate the power of human consciousness. More importantly, it would never again allow any single empire to dominate through technological superiority alone. The Age of Freedom had begun, sparked by the sacrifice of one young human who believed that even impossible missions were worth attempting. As Jimin watched ships departing for missions throughout the galaxy, he knew that somewhere among the stars, other human crews were preparing for their own impossible tasks. They carried with them the knowledge that their greatest weapon was not any technology or weapon, but the uniquely human way of understanding and changing the universe around them. The Soul's Revenge had started the revolution, but it would take all of humanity working together to finish it. And for the first time since the war began, Jimin believed they actually could win.